Let's turn the mic on. That makes a big difference. Okay. Hey, welcome back. My name is Miles. This is the Excellence live stream. Hey, so today right now I wanted to talk about something. I was at the gym thinking about, what's really important. What's really important to make things happen. And understanding will is I think is really kind of a key piece. And so I want to talk about that today. There's a wonderful thing in Star Wars. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I'm just an old Star Wars geek from way back. Um, there's a group of people called the there's a person called the Shaman of the Wills, and actually in the original write up of the Star Wars story, the idea was that there was a keeper of the wills, and this is a person who records the history of the galaxy. And actually, the keeper of the wills had gotten together with someone to record the story of the Skywalker family. And the Skywalker family was being recorded by R2D2. And so the whole story of the Star Wars original trilogy and the rest of it is the story of the Skywalker family as told by R2D2 to some keeper of the wills. Well, this idea of the wills, in this case, in the Star Wars stuff, I don't claim anything to it. That's all owned by Disney, and it's all Lucas's creation. But the wills, Wills, there's this other concept of a shaman of the wills. And I love this wording because a shaman is someone who interacts on behalf of the tribe with the unseen, with the unknown, with the mysterious. And I love this notion of seeing a universe of wills. Now, in this case, talking will, Will. This whole universe of all of the wills of individuals interacting and playing and creating a whole kaleidoscope of worlds, a whole majesty of this magical pattern of interaction of the way everything goes together. And then learning to see the world in that view, learning to see it from that perspective, it makes it interesting. It's a different way of looking at interactions and looking at things. I mean, Star Wars gave us the Force, this concept of the Force, of everything being interconnected. What if the force of will is, and the effect of it is that sensation, is that feeling? And this led me down this long road, and I did a lot of exploration. And in the previous stuff, I was talking about how emotions operate as a short circuit, and a way to optimize thinking, a way to optimize our interaction, so that we understand we can understand things without having to go through the whole mental exercise every time. We can kind of short circuit right to the important stuff. And it's a natural mechanism that we have. And this natural mechanism, it allows us to understand things without understanding things. It's where a lot of the paradigms on considerations around magic come from. The idea that in the 15th century there was an understanding of, there was a belief in associative properties, that if you put something that has a particular property in the proximity of something else, you can infuse the property of one into the other just by proximity, just by maintaining it there. And that's concept of amulets. If you go back and look at old medicine texts from the 15th century, this whole idea of association. Now, we've come a long way since then. Alchemy became chemistry. Medicine has gone into less of a working by association and intellectualization and themes, into making more scientific observations and being able to see what works and what doesn't. And we still experiment and we still explore. But this idea of grabbing hold of some paradigm, some model, whether it's accurate or not, we grab hold of a model so that we can understand something enough to be able to interact with it. Now, when you talk about the vast interactions of millions of people, millions of individuals, each one of them acting on their own. You get this, and the way that they interact and the way those intentions collide and crash and whatnot. Just drive down the freeway. I spend a lot of time in Los Angeles, and there are 1 million people on the freeway. That's 1 million individual lives. Each car, when I'm sitting there and I'm not thinking about it, is just a pair of red lights ahead of me. But inside, just on the other side of those red lights, is someone else with their own life, their own world, their own challenges, their own struggles, their own successes, their own glories. Some of them are on very important phone calls. Others are just thinking about what their loved ones said that day that made them happy. Or maybe they're worried about how they're going to feed their kids. Or maybe they've got some artistic project they're working on. Or who knows what they've got. It's 1 million people. It's 1 million lives. It's 1 million interactions with 1 million other lives. It's just crazy. All of this stuff, everything intermingling. And how can we keep all of the variables in play? Well, we can't. But does that mean we can't find a model that allows us to make use of it? Ooh, it does. It does. And one that I found that I really, really like, a place to start, is a notion of, let me make some notes here. Is a notion really of fate and luck. Now, luck. Here we go. So, I want to start with this idea of fate and luck, because it actually came to me. I was studying Viking mythology, and I enjoyed it. It was fun. It's my study there. Of course, I was watching Vikings, and I was a big fan, and I wanted to know what was going on. So I ended up studying all this stuff and then reading the Eddas and getting involved and understanding a lot of the northern Germanic mysticism. Even went in and looking to some of the revival traditions to see what they were looking at. And I came across this idea of fate and luck, or this notion of fate and luck. Now, fate is the way that I read it. I came up with this model, and this model, is it true? Is it accurate? No, but it gives us a place to work with and a way to think about things, to use the short circuit until somebody does come up with a more accurate, more scientific, and more engaged approach. And that is, imagine that there is the past, and you have this whole paradigm of everything that has ever happened in the history of history and the history of prehistory, in the history of existence, leading up to one moment. And that moment is right now. Now. You get it. Everything we've ever done, every choice we've ever made, every decision we've ever done, every action we've ever taken, every thought we've ever had has led to this moment. But not only that, but our parents and every thought they had and every choice they made and every action they've made that led us to this moment, and their parents all the way back to the beginning. And there's this thread that led of all of these amorphous ideas all coming together, and they all meet at this one place in your moment of existence. And this one moment is where you are given an opportunity to impact it. And that is your choice. What choice you make, what decision you make, whether you choose to go left or right, whether you choose to be kind or harmful, whether you choose to do anything or nothing. And whatever that decision is, whatever choice you make, whatever you take the action in, that momentum plus this momentary choice has one and only one outcome, an inevitable outcome, if left to its own. And here you have this notion of everything from before, the moment of decision, and the inevitable consequence on the other side. Now, this is just a really simple thing. 1, 2, 3. But we need to not make a misunderstanding. We need to not misunderstand that that moment of choice is but one voice. It's one drop of water into a stream that has momentum. It has the momentum of everything that came with it. All the other choices, not only of you, but of everyone related, is coming together. That has momentum. So do you think that one choice on one day, that one time, and never repeated and never tried again and never done anything, is going to have a lasting impact on the inevitable outcome? No, it really isn't. But if we hit that, if we stay dedicated to this series of choices, if we, every time we get a new choice, we hit it again and again and again, and we follow that theme, we follow that case, you get an instance where if you're looking at, say you want to be a better person and you want to be more charitable in your life, and so you make a definition of what charity means to you, and it means, and we'll just say for sake of it being easy, it means that you're going to only make a criticism of someone when you can do so out of kindness, and when you think that that criticism will benefit them, not you, but them. This is a very charitable way of being. This is a very gentle way of facilitating change. It's very charitable. Well, if you decide to live this way, the first day nobody's going to notice, and the second day nobody's going to notice. But week after week, month after month, and eventually into years, that momentum, at least surrounding you and your life, is going to draw in sympathetic wills, sympathetic intentions. And over time, you will begin to turn the direction of that momentum to your output. And so, in an instant moment, we could think of this as fate. If you make a drastically new decision, but it doesn't happen to have any other elements to create the momentum to facilitate the change, yeah, you're fated. You are fated to end in exactly the thing, in exactly the place that you took ownership of. So if you are being dashed on the rocks and tossed here and there, and you're helpless and hopeless and you can't do anything about it, until you take it upon yourself to start changing that, that will be your fate. It is the inevitable outcome. And so now we come into luck. Those people where when you're not looking at the mechanics behind, when you're not looking at their choices, when you're not looking at all the things they built, but you're looking at what they've got, you see that they are lucky. Now, there are people who are born into circumstances which are beneficial. And there are people who are born into circumstances that, well, really suck. But when we become adults, when we grow up, we're responsible for our own role. And whether we are able to change our circumstance is less dependent on the circumstance we find ourselves in. Now, some people will have various changes harder than others. And the difficulty of your change is going to be dependent on where you're starting and where you want to get to, obviously. But those that actually take ownership and take control and go and start looking to steer fate, things start gradually, little by little, over time, beginning to go their way. And it seems as though fate is favoring them. They seem lucky. And so one of the old Scandinavian, Icelandic, wherever you want to originate, the writers of the Eddic poetry and the rest of it, they have this notion of people being drawn to other people with luck. What a wonderful short circuit. If you see people who are lucky, go spend time with them. And maybe their luck will rub off on you. And that's a wonderful short circuit for actually a beautiful thing of putting yourself in an environment where people use their force of will to drive and own their own fate. to try to impact the world. And when you surround yourself with people that are doing that, the language changes. You begin to form the language around building, around taking control, around owning it. And when you surround yourself with that and you're enveloped in that and you talk that way, you walk that way, you see the world that way, then you're able to start seeing, you're actually able to start feeling how things flow. And that leads to, kind of another important notion, and that being one of momentum. Now, momentum. What do I mean by this? Again, it's that piece of when everything's going in a certain way, when it has a lot of factors all contributing to it, whether that's a large number of people all focusing toward a single end, or whether that's a lot of work done over a long period of time toward a common goal, or a combination of both. It ends up building up almost a momentum. It was really well described as a flywheel. It's when you're trying to create change in a large organization, the change you're trying to do is actually, it starts really hard. You have to put a lot of energy to move it just a little bit. So you have to bring all your will and all your effort and all your drive and all your hunger into this thing, and that wheel's just moving ever so slowly. It's hard and it takes time. But with perseverance and with time and with effort and with keep pushing it the same direction, with vision, with that force of will translates into this wheel, and it becomes like a flywheel. And once it starts moving, the weight, all the energy put into moving this heavy, heavy wheel around will begin to carry that movement forward. And so when you apply the same pressure of will, you begin to speed up this already moving wheel toward your ends. And as it keeps going, and as you keep building, and as it keeps rolling, suddenly this wheel becomes this unstoppable force. And the same energy that was holding you back, now the same mechanics, the same benefit begins working to you. Because now, instead of pushing against someone else's momentum, you've either gotten on board with theirs or you started creating your own. And that momentum will carry you through. And as you get tired and you coast, you get exhausted. If you've ever been on a bicycle, you go and go and go and go and go and go. You can stop and it'll keep carrying you forward. You'll keep going forward, maybe not as fast, maybe not as effectively, but you will keep going forward. You can rest a bit without losing forward movement. This is that notion of luck. What's happening? Well, you're still moving forward even though you're not trying. Look, they don't even try. And things happen. Well, if you don't see the work that went into building that, whether that's in your life or a generation before you's life, or whether you're moving into a company or a position, or you have an online community that you're joining, you may not see all the work that went into making that community what it is at the time you joined. But it looks like there's this wonderful community. Yes, that was work. Someone went and built that. And you come on and wow, how lucky you are to have found this community. Well, yes, sure. And if you can slot yourself in and exercise your will to keep that lucky circumstance going, it'll continue. Now, does that mean it's going to make you win the lottery? No, of course not. That's not what I mean. What I mean is that when you apply your will, the will of others aligns to it. And when you have a number of wills all aligning together, magic starts to happen. You just happen to meet the person who just happens to have the skill set that you need for the idea that you're exploring. And it looks like fate has smiled on you. And the reality is there were 5 other people before them that could have done the exact same thing, but you weren't ready to see it yet. But because you've applied your will, and because you've invested, and because you've gone and associated yourself with what you wanted, this happened. And this brought it in. Now, to make this happen, you've got to have a strong will. Now, let's talk about that. That's another thing I should probably comment on. Let's do that. Let's talk about strong and weak wills. So, the strong and weak will. What is a strong will? Well, a strong will is not one that, is going to come in and bulldoze anything. Honestly, I watch those wills go, and they're destructive to the process. They can have an impact in a consolidated small area with where there's a lot of people with weak wills. And they can disrupt. They can go and break. But to build, to give things momentum, to build up this momentum of fate or of luck through will that we're talking about, to build it up requires a strong will. And a strong will doesn't mean an Arnold Schwarzenegger will. It means a fortitude and a tenacity, a stick-to-itiveness, a way of holding on to something, holding on to an idea and carrying that forward. And even when things get difficult, you keep holding on to that idea. Mothers have perhaps the best example of this. They're with their child, and raising a child's hard, and there are days when it sucks, and there's days when it's it's a screaming day. Don't know. We're just screaming today. That's the day that it's going to happen, and there's nothing you can do about it. And it will wear down and break down and fatigue you. You can watch it physically age a person. But while it's going, it doesn't mean you just walk away. It doesn't mean you can give up. It means today it was hard. And tomorrow we do what we got to do. I look at that as a form of strong will. The weak will, I have to be careful here because I don't mean to cast a judgment on it, because I think that we all have strong will and weak will simultaneously. It's just what we're applying it to. When you're talking about the gym, there are people that go to the gym and they have the tenacity and they stick with the gym. It's because they get something back out of it that keeps feeding it. That really helps to keep our will strong and to keep our dedication and focus on it. Oh, it really helps to do that when we can feed it a little bit. But sometimes we can't. And sometimes there are people who just give up. Now, giving up is when our wills are weak. And I think that everyone gives up on certain things. Now, when you give up on things that are important to you, that's different than when you're giving up on things that aren't. And that's something that every individual needs to fight with. Every individual needs to work with. But a strong will is one that can stay to purpose and can really work toward delivering some kind of valuable outcome in some way, even in the face of resistance, even when it's difficult, even when it's a challenge. Especially when it's a challenge. Fortitude and the willingness to push through discomfort and pain and frustration and animosity or teasing or anything. the ability to push through whatever resistance takes form. That's what strengthens us. And if you, just like training any muscle, sometimes it requires cultivation. You can't walk into a gym and lift 300 pounds over your head overnight unless you're, a freak of nature. Well, I can't do it. I'll just put it that way. I can't do it. I tried. I injured myself. So I have to start small. I have to start little by little, grow it up as we go. The will is the same thing. There are tricks and techniques we can use that will help. And that's where we come into going and building the will. But everyone has it. Everyone has willpower. Everyone. And there are some things that you will not give up on. Don't know why, don't know what they are. They're individual to everybody. But there are some things that you will never give up on. Even if it's having coffee in the morning. I don't know. There are so many things. And so what we want to do is we want to identify where we want our fate to be. And we're going to need to build the momentum. And we need the strength to build that momentum. We need a strong will. We need a strong desire and understanding of why we're doing a thing, and reinforcement and encouragement of the importance of the thing we're doing. And this is the focus and the power of how we build a strong will in the face of a great deal of resistance. Because strength and weakness is all about how much resistance you meet and whether you can overcome it. Now, great ideas, wonderful. So how do we go building up and powering up the will? So, here's another good one. Let's power up the will. Perfect. All right. I'll tell you what. There are three aspects. We've been talking about this in different forms, but I got introduced to a new way of looking at this. And it's in the mind, the heart, and with the hand. Mind, heart, hand. So this is the way you power up the will. Now, powering up the will is giving it the ability to retain its effort. It's how you feed it. It's how you keep it going. It's how you, when things are looking down, when the rain is pouring and the night is miserable and you're cold and shivering, how do you keep going? These are the three tools that when we use them can do that. If we set it up properly, starting with a good foundation is probably the best place to start. So starting with a good foundation, let's start with that. Number one, the mind. Are you dedicating yourself to your purpose for good reason? And I don't mean because you feel a certain way. That's the heart part. We're talking about the mind part. Does it make sense? Does it follow logically, rationally? In a quiet moment of calm contemplation, can you look at this and say, yes, I understand why we're doing this? I'm actually in the middle of an experiment on this for this live stream. Why do I do this? Because there are people out there that are struggling with empowering themselves. There are people out there that are struggling with a certain level of hopelessness that is possibly self-induced. And my hope, my belief is that if I just keep talking about these things in the way that I see them, if I keep explaining them, if I keep giving them different colors and different flavors and different aspirations, it might inspire someone, anyone. It might kindle a flame for them to stand up and say, hey, I can do that. And that they begin taking fate into their own hands. And they bring their own notion of what they want into reality. And in so doing, they fight the good fights. They overcome the demons. They battle the battles. And they eventually come to a place where they are a force for good. They are a force for creation. They are a force for bringing more of what we are able to bring as human beings to the world. And I believe that if I have a proper soapbox, a proper bullhorn, a proper way of communicating it, some way, somehow, someone will hear it. And if one person hears it, then it's been worth doing. Because more than one person has already heard it, and I've already seen its success. And I'm really looking forward to seeing more and to hearing about more. So please, if you're motivated, if you're inspired, if you're encouraged by any of this, by all means, let me know. So in my mind, I have a very good thought. My reasoning is solid. The human heart is something that responds to reason as well as to emotion. Inspiring, propelling, and carrying a person forward. And if there is a constant, steady source of support with good, practiced, well-vetted strategies that are known to work, applied, then this is a good thing. And I want to bring this forward. So know why you're doing, know why you want what you want, but understand it from a reasonable standpoint and approach it with a shrewdness of mind and practicality. Everyone has capabilities of really thinking whether something's a good idea or not. Maybe looking at a few risks and saying, let's make sure we don't do this, we don't do that. But you can do it. Everyone has that capability. Everyone should do that. Second, heart. Oh, you've got to want it. You can think something's a good idea, but if you don't actively have a love for the outcome, if you don't passionately and emotionally and if you don't hunger for that outcome, if it's not one of the most important things in the world to you, then what are you doing? Find something that is. And there are a lot of, I've met a lot of people who have this notion that I don't have anything that's that important to me. Okay. I struggle to believe you, but I also would believe that there is a level of contentment that exists that means it's not important to go pursue it. And the strong will, the powered up will, is one where not realizing what you're after isn't satisfactory. It's not something that you can go without. It's not something that you can just set aside and say, it's okay. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Look, that's mediocrity. And mediocrity doesn't have the strength to push through when resistance gets really tough. So in order to move that wheel, in order to push that momentum, in order to carry that through, it's got to matter. And it's got to matter to you. And it doesn't have, things that matter to others don't have to matter to you. That's okay. It matters to them, and they'll use that to push their momentum. It's okay. Every individual will is differently manifested and does its own thing. And that's fine. That's allowed. Your will, if you're going to really want it to be powered up, if you want it to be at its highest potential, or if you want it to be well fed, then not realizing what you're after can't be acceptable. It becomes one of those cases where it will undermine you if it isn't manifested. And that will, in times when you are lacking direction, in times when you are not necessarily in resistance, but times when everything's gone blah, when you're not motivated, when you just are feeling neutral, you don't have any inspiring passion or anything. This becomes one of those things where, well, I'd rather do this than not do this. And it'll keep you going. It'll keep pushing through. The third one is hand. And by this, I mean that industriousness. I mean the ability to work. Idle hands are the devil's playground. This doesn't mean that idle hands are used by the devil to do other things. It means that idle hands don't push wheels of fate. Idle hands don't bring momentum. God put us on this planet to create. We were brought here to manifest, to seek, to aspire, to grasp, and to build, and to bring to life ideas for a better world. And different ideas are going to have different effects, and then we find out what those effects are, and then we take it from there. And this process, going on for thousands of years, has led to this amazing world where I can sit here and talk to you about this. It's brilliant. And I think that we all really, we should be part of that. We should be part of that bringing that to bear, bringing that into reality. And every one of us is motivated for different things. Every one of us is motivated to a different outcome. Every one of us is motivated in different ways to a different purpose. You know, I know somebody who's a social worker who I respect tremendously because she has a genuine heart. Yeah, it's painful job. I mean, it's brutal. But then I hear her kindness, and I'm blown away by it. I'm left with absolute awe. I've got another friend of mine who's heavily motivated in keeping the world safe. And I don't mean necessarily as a policeman, although I know a couple others there where that's a whole different thing unto themselves. I admire the hell out of all of these people that take these calling jobs. And all jobs are a calling. Every occupation can be one. But you go in and you know, some of them are going to pay more than others. Some of them are going to have, every one of them is going to have its own benefits and its own drawbacks. But the people that do that, the people that go in and actively engage in what's going on, the people that do the work even when they don't want to, that is what brings it into reality. And the reality is when you manifest what you're after, maybe it's just one day, maybe it's just 1 hour, maybe it's just one moment. But when you manifest it and you realize your impact, that you did that without you, this wouldn't be. It restores, it rejuvenates, it brings the heart back to life. And so, when we want to power up our will, let's work back up the chain. When we want to power up our will, we bring reason and know why we do what we do. We bring the mind. We feel the passion and the heat and the ambition and the heart and the fire and the everything, the compulsion to do what we do. We bring the heart. And then we do the work. which manifests the change that we want to see. We invest our time, our physicality, our strength, our treasure. We invest ourselves into what we do. And in doing that, we manifest what we're after. And those manifestations, being right, being in the right in your mind, that gives you reinforcement, that keeps you on the straight and narrow path. Having your heart engaged fuels your energy levels and gives you that I guess that's a word. It brings that to life. And then doing the work and then seeing the fruits of your labors. All these things reinforce and reinstill the will and give the will that extra punch it needs to carry through in the hard times and drive hard in the good times, in the easy times. And that is how we strengthen our will. Likewise, when we don't have those things, our will weakens and it atrophies. And when we have a strong will, we can shift the momentum to our intention. And when we have a weak will, we become subject to the momentum of the intention of others. And that momentum begins to look like some inevitable outcome of some grand weaver of threads somewhere, mapping out a tapestry that ends up becoming our lives that seem so inevitable. You know, when you go back and you look back at your life and you look at how everything got you to the moment you're in today, it all looks like it was so inevitable. It just had to go exactly how that way went. And I knew one guy, there was one guy that told me, you know, there's no point in thinking about what ifs in the past. It happened exactly as it could have. It happened exactly as it should have. It happened exactly as it needed to. Now, it doesn't always mean you're going to be on the good side or the bad side of that. It doesn't mean you get any say. It doesn't mean it's going to be what you want it to be. But it does mean that it looks like that. It looks like it was inevitable. And so the future, likewise, when we're there, will look like it's inevitable. Our one chance, our one opportunity to affect it is the decision we make at the moment we make it, the now. And so, make those decisions over and over and over and over again. And keep reinforcing what you're after. One decision in a lifetime of doing something else, it may work. It may have it. Things do happen. But it's not going to be as effective as a lifetime of decisions made to the same causes, following the same guidelines, using the same rules. So why it's so important to find rules that if everything goes as you foresee, not only your fate, but the fate of everyone around you will become very, very lucky. So, there you go. I would love to hear about your thoughts on this. I would love to know where you stand on this. I'd love to know your desires, your ambitions, and your avenue of fate. How's it worked for you? I'd also love to know what you're going to be doing with this. That's my hope. I need to check something. Am I not sitting here with a... Yeah, I guess we are. All right. So, there you go. There's that. Just so you know, I guess we'll do a little business stuff. I've got so there's the Twitch channel. That's going awesome. The link will be up at the end. I've also got a Patreon that if you want to chat with me, I have a Patreon set up for Discord chat. I'm on Discord all day. I usually keep it on while I'm working and while I'm doing my stuff throughout the day. And I would love to have you on Discord. It's a $1 Patreon subscription. Just bounce on there, and it's just there so that I know who's serious and who isn't. And I'd love to see you on the Discord. Maybe this is something we could talk about. And if you've got other things that you want to talk about, let me know. Leave a message, say hello. I would love to hear from you, and I'd love to know what we can talk about. This is kind of going to be my thing. I kind of fancy myself a bit of a shaman of will, a shaman of the wills, if you like. And I bringing this awareness and showing how these things fit together. That's really what I want to do. That's what I'm looking to bring to the table here. And so I want to hear about your struggles, and I want to hear about your successes, because the struggles help me figure out what's going forward, and the successes are the whole reason we're doing it in the first place. So with that, last thing, if you want private one-on-one session to do that, jump on here or on LinkedIn or wherever and say hello, and we can talk about that too. Totally happy. If you've got an individual transition, you've got some other way that you've got something going on that you want some special help with, let's talk about it. Happy to do it. So with that, I guess we will wrap this up. I really like this notion. I like this notion. I've used this idea of fate and luck very effectively in my own life, and I'm kind of relying on it right now. So we'll see how it goes. I've been talking about this stuff for years. I've been working with people for years. I've been building and helping bring more positive outcomes to people's lives for years, whether they're my staff, whether they're my friends, whether they're others that go along with it. And with the encouragement of those friends, I'm here talking to you. So I'm hoping it works out, and we'll see if my momentum can carry me through. My mind is right. God, do I want it? And I'm willing to do the work. So give that some thought. Think about your own situation. Think about where you're lucky, where you're not. And then see if you can find a way to feel your will out. And see if you can find ways to strengthen it up. With that, I'll talk to you guys later. This is Miles, the Excellence Livestream. Good to talk to you.